Do you fear becoming irrelevant? At some point, a lot of men quietly start asking themselves, am I becoming irrelevant? Maybe you've spent years building your career. Maybe you have worked hard to become respected. Maybe you have been the person that people rely on. The problem solver, the one with all the answers, the person who gets things done. But then somewhere along the way, a thought starts to creep in. Do people still need me like they used to? Am I falling behind? Is my best already behind me? And these thoughts are not easy thoughts for people to admit to because there's always some sort of shame attached to it. Hi, I'm Cheryl, an anxiety therapist, and I'm the creator of the Heart to Heal method. I help people to understand emotional patterns, stress responses, and experiences that shape the way they think, feel, and respond. And I do this so that I can help them to move on from feeling overwhelmed, from feeling disconnected, or feeling stuck towards a greater calm, confidence, and connection. Through my work, I often see that some of the biggest emotional struggles are not always about what is happening on the outside. They are about the stories that we start telling ourselves on the inside. There could be stories about our work and how we feel valued. It could be stories about, your identity and what your identity actually is, and whether these things still really matter. You might know this feeling. You might have had this feeling so many times, and you might look back and realize how much of your identity has been connected to what you do. People find sort of a bit later on in life, especially when people retire, they don't actually know what their identity is because they've lived with their identity being, the job that you've done, the achievements that you've made, the ability to provide for people, what your knowledge is, what your experiences are. And then suddenly you're retired and you've taken on a whole other identity and don't understand what that is. And from what I've noticed, this seems to be happening earlier and earlier in life. The years, these things that I've just mentioned might give you confidence and a sense of purpose. But maybe things have started to change. Another big one that I see with a lot of people is when the children have grown up and they've left home, those husband and wife have actually got nothing in common. And that's a really big one that I see with people. You might find that you're working at the moment and maybe younger people are coming into your industry and maybe your responsibilities are looking different. You might feel a bit like threatened by the younger versions of yourselves. Maybe you're no longer chasing the same goals that you once did. Maybe you've decided that it's something else that you want. And suddenly you will find yourself wondering, who actually am I? And I'm not achieving at the same level. So then you start to question things and you start to question what it is that you want. The thing that I see is the fear of becoming irrelevant is often not really about the age that you are. It's about your identity and you having an identity shift. For many people, especially those who have spent years being successful and dependable, their sense of value becomes connected to performance. It becomes connected to being needed. It becomes connected to being respected. It becomes connected to being the person who can handle everything. So when that starts to change, it can feel really, really unsettling. Because it's not just about losing a role. It can feel like you are suddenly losing part of yourself. And that can be really hard to handle. But I want you to know this, okay? Your value is never only in what you've achieved. Your value is always being in who you are as a person. Quite often, you'll spend years of your life proving yourself. You know, you'll chase that next achievement, you'll chase that next promotion, you'll chase that next milestone. And then without realizing it, you start to measure your worth by external things. We all do it. It's not something that's exclusively to men. We all do it. And we look at what we've got and we automatically assume that what we've got is how successful we are and how successful we look and how much responsibility that we can carry and how much recognition that we receive from other people. But there comes a point where the old way of measuring yourself, it no longer works. It becomes, quite redundant. And that's not because you've lost something. It's because you're being invited to grow to your next level and into something new. My Heart to Heal approach is about understanding the deeper patterns that shape how you see yourself. So instead of you asking, am I still valuable if I'm not performing at the same level that I once was? You begin to ask yourself, who am I beyond what I have achieved? That is a totally different question and a totally different game changer. Because your identity is not something you lose when your circumstances change. Your identity starts to evolve. And it starts to evolve through the experiences that you've gained and the wisdom that you've built up. So you're not starting right from scratch. You're starting from, like I say, from experiences and wisdom and the person that you have become up to this point. Because those things don't just disappear. They become the foundations that you lay down for your next chapter. Through the Heart to Heal method, you can begin rebuilding a stronger sense of identity that is not dependent only on achievements or external validations. You can reconnect with your purpose. You can recognise the value you bring beyond your job title, your statuses or your past successes. You can move from constantly proving your worth to people to living in a place where you already know what your worth is. Your value does not disappear because life changes. It grows with you. If this video made you feel differently about your identity and about aging and the purpose or the pressure to always stay ahead, I hope it helped you see yourself from a very different perspective. And if you did find this video helpful, please like and subscribe and follow along for more conversations about anxiety, emotional well-being, and the hidden patterns that shape how we think, feel, and live. And remember, your time to shine starts from within. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.